Let's get started then. All right. I want to welcome everybody today for our April Fishing Game Committee. I'm Jeff McMillan, Chairman of the Tennessee Wildlife Fishing Commission, and I want to first thank the City of Paris for letting us have the meeting here, and we had a nice reception last night at the Carroll County new shooting complex, which was very impressive. And it's nice it's what I like about having meetings in other parts of the state, so we actually get to see some of the entities that we actually make rulings and vote on and approve for financial aid and stuff like that. So it's good to see and have a chance to see those, and we all enjoyed it, those that got to attend. But we're excited about being part of the Fish Fry tonight and the governor's luncheon tomorrow. So we certainly appreciate the reception and very much appreciative of it. We'll go ahead and get started. Ms. Barber, can we have a roll call?
Jim Bledsoe.
Here.
Harold Cannon.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Jeff Griggs.
Here.
Jeff McMillan.
Here.
Tom Rice.
Here.
Jim Ripley. Julie Schuster.
Here.
Clayton Stout. James Stroud. Trey Teague.
Here.
Jamie Woodson.
We have a quorum? All right, thank you, Barbara. Are there any announcements that you would have, Director Carter?
No, not this time.
Any of the other commissioners want to announce anything? Before we get started then with the Wildlife Management Committee, I'd like to recognize Ron Crabtree, a representative from the Quail Forever, and he has a couple of new biologists that he would like to introduce.
I know you have a tight schedule. We appreciate you giving us the time to show that some of these projects that you undertake, you're actually successful in them. And you've got a little bio on these two people here. The project I'm speaking of is the two new wildlife biologists that we were able to get a grant to fund, and I'll let you take a look at them and let them tell you the geography that they cover. Thank you very much.
My name's Kevin Edge. I'm based out of the Brownsville office. I'll service those areas surrounding Brownsville, north to southwest Tennessee here.
I'm Brittany Vyers, and I'm based in the Huntington office in Carroll County, and I'll be servicing all the counties around there in basically the eastern half of western Tennessee.
Well, thank for both of you for coming today and letting us meet you. And Ron, that was the shortest talk that I've ever heard you talk, so we were very appreciative of that. I mean, I didn't say I'd cut you off that quick, but okay. But I do appreciate it. And I want to welcome all the guests that are here today, and I assume there's a sign-up sheet that's already making its way through the crowd. Anyone that wants to address the commission during one of our topics is more than glad to. Please try to keep your points or keep your comments to the point, and please come to the mic and state your name and address the chairman or of the committee or myself. So you're free to talk, but please come when it's a subject matter that's pertinent to what we're discussing at that time. If there's not any other questions, we'll get started, and we're going to start with the Wildlife Management Committee and Chairman Trey Teague, please.
Thank you, Chairman McMillan. I'm Trey Teague, Chair of the Wildlife Management Committee, and first I would like to introduce Daryl Radijak, Chief of the Wildlife Division.
Thank you, Commissioner Teague and the rest of the commission. This is our big day. This is what the Wildlife Division is. One of the primary purposes of our division in the agency is for this meeting today and the meeting next month. What today's meeting is primarily going to be about is we're going to introduce the recommendations, the TWRA recommendations for the 2013-2014 hunting and trapping seasons. And what I plan to do is I'm going to get things started. I'm going to do a slight introduction to tell you about this whole process that we have going on. And then I'm going to introduce our staff up here to talk about their areas of expertise. In particular, we'll have Chuck Yost, who's our deer and hog coordinator, Chris Hunter, who's our turkey and bear coordinator. We'll also bring forward Tim White, who's our waterfowl specialist, as well as WMA coordinator, and Steve Nifong, who's not in the wildlife division, but he's the assistant chief of law enforcement, and he will bring forward some recommendations regarding our manner and means proclamation. What I'd like to do is I created one smooth flowing presentation, so we won't have to interrupt to load different presentations and to introduce different people. We'll take care of it from our end. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to get started with the 2013 hunting and trapping season recommendations. Where I wanted to start, knowing that a number of the commissioners before us right now have really not been through this entire process, I wanted to do a little explanation on how we get to our recommendations. So I want to explain the season setting process. Believe it or not, this process sometimes takes the better part of 6 months, and every single year we go through the season setting process. And it's a very intensive process that we go through. And what we do is we begin with soliciting input from the general public regarding our hunting and trapping seasons. And we'll open up this input, public input period, usually the day after or soon after the hunting season closes. So we'll open it up in January, and we'll run it for approximately about a month. And we'll gather as much input as we can from the general public. The one thing I wanted to make note for this year that we're in, it was a very light year. To give you some idea of what we're looking at, last year when we had our public comment period, we received over 400 public recommendations. This year, we didn't even hit 4 dozen. Don't know why it was extremely quiet, but it leads us to believe that a lot of folks are happy with what the agency is doing, and so they really don't have that many recommendations for changes to our hunting seasons. To put that in perspective, the number one program that often gets discussed is our deer seasons. Of those 4 dozen recommendations, 24 of them involved some type of change to the deer season, whether it was season length, bag limits, the structure of the season. So that was definitely the most commented on program. The next thing followed by that, deer and turkey and bear each received 3 public comments. So the fact that we're not receiving many public comments leads us to believe that many folks are happy with what we're doing in Tennessee. Another thing that is involved with this season setting process are human dimension surveys, or HD surveys. And what these are where we solicit public opinion. A big part of our regulations, obviously, they're set primarily to protect our resource. But when the resource is adequately protected, there are things that we can do to increase opportunity, or to make the hunting experience better. And oftentimes we ask our hunters what they would like to see out of our seasons. And so we do conduct numerous human dimension surveys. The one that we usually refer to most is our UT survey. University of Tennessee conducts this hunter opinion survey. They used to do it every year. Now they're on a every other year rotation as far as the hunting seasons are concerned. We'll refer to that quite often. We've also used responsive management to solicit some hunter opinion for us as well. The next thing that goes into our season setting process is our management needs. Our agency, as you know, is made up of a vast number of professionals, many of which are wildlife biologists with advanced degrees, and they really know what they're doing when it comes to taking care of the resource. And so one of the things that we ask them to do each and every year is to look at the data that we collect on whatever species they're in charge of managing, and to see if there's any particular needs where we could adjust the regulations to better suit that resource. And then lastly, one of the things that we definitely take into consideration is we try to abide by the requests that we receive from the commission. Last year, there was a number of specific requests that you put forward to the Wildlife Division to investigate for this coming year. And we have a list of those which we'll go over here shortly, but we do want to make sure we address any of the commission needs that they have. And so going into the season setting process, when we began this process, we put together that list of items that we specifically wanted to talk about within the entire agency that the commission requested for us to investigate. The one thing that I think I hope everyone understands is this whole process is truly a bottom-up approach. We have hundreds of individuals that work for the agency that are professionals in their field and really know what they're doing. And this goes all the way to the people on the ground in the field. And so this season setting process begins with wildlife officers that are assigned in the counties, WMA managers, the folks on the ground actually dealing with the animals, actually dealing with the hunters and the people, listening to what they have to say, and then they filter their ideas up the chain. It goes from the people on the ground to the folks in the regions. The regions formulate their recommendations. Those recommendations are then brought forward to the main office in Nashville. And we have a big season-setting meeting that literally takes the smallest request, whether it be from one of our officers, whether it be from one of our public comments. Every comment is looked at and considered. Not all of them will come up the chain, but the best ones that we feel are most appropriate do make it up the chain. And that's when we finally come before you today. We finally come before you today with our agency recommendation. And this recommendation that we present to you is simply an informational session. I want you to understand that the commission does not have to take a vote. There's no committee vote or commission vote tomorrow. This is simply to provide the commission the information in which our recommendations that we're proposing for this year. The next step in this process is after we provide you with our recommendations, we're going to put those recommendations out for public review. We'll once again solicit public comment for approximately 30-day period, and then we'll come back in May and vote on all these recommendations, or you will vote on all these recommendations. So that's the entire process in which we stand before you today. It's very involved, numerous people within the agency, lots of time and lots of effort is spent on this whole season setting process. And so I'm going to get started. And one of the things that we wanted to look at first, or at least we wanted to make you aware of first, is with those human dimension surveys that we do, the University of Tennessee looks at how well our agency has done. And the hunter input and the comments that we receive from our constituents really mean a lot to us. If you look at our two biggest programs in the state, and when I say the biggest programs, these are the most popular programs. We have the most deer hunters, the largest constituency of hunters are deer hunters, and that estimate ranges from 200,000 to 250,000 deer hunters in the state of Tennessee. Turkey hunters are up there. I believe we're floating around 100,000 turkey hunters. And so those are our two most high-profile programs that we have. And if you look at the satisfaction rate from our deer and turkey hunters, this first one you see here at 91%, that is the satisfaction rate from our turkey hunters. They're extremely satisfied with how we are managing our turkeys. This next one you see up here, that's the 5-year average is 83%. That's our deer program. These are incredible percentages. When you're looking at satisfaction rates of how well we are managing our resource, we really take pride in what we're doing there. To give you an idea of what we feel is a pretty good job, what I did is I spent a few hours the other day trying to find out how well we compared to other states as far as their satisfaction rates with their deer program. And luckily, Responsive Management is another HD company that does these surveys. And I was able to dig up satisfaction rates from various states. Now, albeit I will admit some of these are a few years old. They're the latest surveys that I could find available on the Responsive Management website. But if you look at the deer programs in some of those other states, they vary tremendously. Vermont had a 52% approval rating. The next highest was Georgia at a 72% approval rating for their deer programs. But it pretty much varied between 50 to 70%. And then when you throw Tennessee in there with our 83% 5-year average, we're very, very proud of what we've done with our deer program, and we want to continue to make sure that our hunters are satisfied with what we're doing. The last question I just want to show you is we do ask a question on how satisfied are you with how the entire agency manages our wildlife resources. And this includes not just wildlife but fisheries as well. And so we have a incredible approval rating for pretty much managing all the wildlife in Tennessee. To put that in perspective, if you look at the pie chart here, 87% of all of our constituents are satisfied with our management strategies. The 7% who are dissatisfied, I'll have you know it's less than 2% that are extremely dissatisfied. But if you look at that pie chart, it's very impressive to say that almost 9 out of 10 folks that we work for are happy with what we're doing. So we're quite proud of these numbers. So where does this come into play? It's going to come in with a couple of issues that we discussed during this season setting process. We've had some requests from the commissioner, some of the commissioners, to investigate certain aspects of our programs and whether or not we would consider recommendations on them. The first one that we literally talk about every year, regardless of if the commission specifically requests it or not, but there's oftentimes many comments about our buck limits, and recently our turkey limits, our two, there's been discussion about whether or not we should allow 2 turkeys per day. What I'd like to touch on first is the 2 buck limit. Going back to the human dimension surveys that the University of Tennessee conducted for us, last year Commissioner Teague requested that we investigate what the hunter opinion is regarding our buck limits. And to give you a little bit of history, this has long been a question for our agency. Going back 10 or 12 years, buck limits were a huge issue. And we started asking a question many, many years ago on this UT survey about our buck limits. And the question was it wasn't asked properly, at least in my opinion, because it asked if folks were in support of the 3 buck limit. And the overwhelming majority said they supported the 3 buck limit. But then a follow-up question asked, if we were to change that limit, what would you like? And we saw that there was support for a 2 buck limit, but it was misleading because the majority of folks already liked the 3 buck, but if they were forced to change, they would select that. And about 6 years ago, we said, enough with the confusion, let's just ask a question flat out. If you had your choice of buck limits in the state of Tennessee from 1 to 10, what would you like? And we asked that question for a number of years, and then we dropped it. And then this past year, because of the specific request from Commissioner Teague, we asked that question again. And these are the results from that. You'll see here that one buck limit stands out among all the rest, and that is the 3 buck limit. About 41% of our hunters, our deer hunters, preferred a 3 buck limit in the state of Tennessee. And what I did to compile this to give us a better idea, I kind of scrunched it up. And if you look at the support for buck limits that are 2 or less, you see approximately 24% supported 2 or lower buck limit. We had 41% that supported a 3 buck limit. And then, believe it or not, we had 33% that supported 4 or more bucks. So if you combine those two, you're looking at about 75% of our hunters are in favor of 3 or more bucks for a buck limit, which is surprising because oftentimes you hear about the desire to lower the buck limits. This survey here, I believe, is much more representative because it's literally focusing on the random hunter. Besides the adamant hunter that may request lower buck limits, this survey is actually hitting the guys out there that we call them the weekend warriors, that may only hunt a day or two. They buy a license just like everyone else. There's also the social hunter. There's so many different folks out there that go hunting for different reasons. And this survey tries to hit all that representative sample. And so we're quite pleased to know that our 3 buck limit currently is definitely the main, has the most support of all the buck limits we have in Tennessee. So when we considered this year throughout the season setting process about our buck limits, our recommendation was not to adjust our statewide buck limit and leave it at a 3 buck limit. Does anyone have any questions regarding our buck limits? All right, I'm gonna move on. Another thing that sometimes comes up, this appears to be more of an internal struggle that we have within the agency, but oftentimes we talk about relaxing the turkey limit in the fact that you're only allowed 1 gobbler per day. And there's been discussions over the last 4 or 5 years of whether or not we relax that restriction and allow at least 2 gobblers per day. And we again discussed it during our season setting process. And there's a number of reasons why we're not making a recommendation. We would like to keep it at only 1 gobbler per day. first and foremost, we really haven't received public input. There's not a large outcry from the public to change our daily turkey limit. And so that's probably one of the primary reasons why we're not going to recommend it. The thing that you have to keep in mind, if you look at our turkey program, the satisfaction rate with our turkey program is over 90%. Making a major change like that generally results in that satisfaction going one way, and with a 92% approval rating, it's probably going to go down because we will upset some people. And so we are not recommending any changes to the daily turkey bag limit. The other thing is we still do have a little bit of biological concern when it comes to the turkeys. The Southeast, you've heard about this before, but the Southeast appears to be experiencing some form of turkey decline. Tennessee is a special state. We really have not seen it compared to other states like Arkansas and Missouri. And there's been a postdoctorate hired by the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies to investigate this phenomena of Southeast turkey decline. And he's looking at it, and Gray, if you could correct me, the report is due out soon?
It should be due out in just a couple of weeks.
Okay. And they're going to come up with a recommendation and hopefully as to reasons why some of these states are experiencing turkey decline. Having said that, Tennessee is a diamond in the rough. We obviously have fantastic turkey hunting in the state of Tennessee. We really have not experienced this decline. There are some counties that we're keeping our eye out on because they may be experiencing some type of decline. And so we're really hesitant of making any major changes that could affect harvest, that could impact and trigger some type of decline in Tennessee. We don't want that. We are looked at in the Southeast as one of the premier turkey hunting destinations, and we want to do whatever we can to stay that way. So our recommendation or non-recommendation that we have is that we do not change the daily turkey bag limits. So having discussed those, another request that we received, and this was, I believe there was one or two public comments regarding senior hunts. As most everyone here knows that we do have youth hunts, young sportsmen's hunts throughout the deer season that set aside a weekend, actually 2 weekends throughout the deer season in which young sportsmen, and these are kids under 16 years of age, more or less have the weekend to themselves to go deer hunting. And a request was made to investigate doing something similar for seniors. And again, this is going to be a non-recommendation from us. We're not recommending looking into senior hunts, simply because if you look at the segment of folks that would be eligible for this, they tend to be the crowd that has the most time afield or able to have the most time afield. And we would have to take away days from the other segment. And so trying to find a place to put a senior hunt is something that we don't believe is warranted at this time. And obviously they have the ability to hunt all throughout the season. And we believe that there's enough opportunity for them at the present time that a special weekend set aside for them is not something that we would recommend. The next issue that I just want to bring up briefly, we're not prepared to discuss it, but it was a request by Commissioner for us to investigate raccoon field trials and the fact that raccoon field trials are limited to 7 trials outside of the raccoon season, whereas other field trials, in particular rabbits and waterfowl and other birds, they're unlimited in their scope. And so we are investigating that. And we just had a meeting here recently. We are not prepared to make any recommendation because we have to bring it forward to our director staff first. But hopefully in the future we could address this. But I just wanted to inform the commission that we are taking an in-depth look at this, and we will decide whether or not there's any recommendations forthcoming. If we do, I just want to make a note, if there is a recommendation forthcoming, it would require a rule change. And as you know, that is a much longer process than just setting these proclamations. And so that's one of the reasons nothing could have been done for this year, and that allowed us a little bit more time to devote to really investigating this issue. The next issue that we're asked to take a look at for this coming year involves the waterfowl blind drawing process. Now, this is something that occurs every year at a number of our WMAs in which we have waterfowl blinds that that are up for a drawing. And what this would involve, again, would be a potential rule change. And so we have some time. We'd never be able to implement something for this year. And so if a potential rule change is forthcoming, we have some time to work on it. But what we did is we had a meeting with all of our waterfowl biologists. And what I'd like to do is call up Tim White, our statewide waterfowl coordinator, to talk to you about the meeting and where they are with this potential issue.
Commissioners, thanks for having me. Well, as Darrell mentioned, every August, several of our wildlife management areas have a duck blind drawing where we draw out for those blinds for the season. And there have been some complaints coming in from a few members of the public and a few of the management areas that that there's some duck blinds that are being bought and sold at some of these drawings. Now, that practice is currently illegal, and so we had a meeting on January 17th where a number of us got together from different parts of the state, different regions, management area folks, law enforcement folks, and we discussed the issue. And we discussed potential methods for solving the problem. And since we knew that there was going to be a lot of public input that was going to be required to tackle the issue, and it wouldn't be able to be done this year, we had a couple of strategies we laid out for the coming summer. What we're going to propose to do is in July and August, we're going to have an increased PR campaign to try to let people know that the practice is illegal, has been illegal, and that we intend to try to curtail this activity. In September, and we're going to announce this in our press releases. We're going to announce it at the duck blind drawings. In September, we have an annual managers meeting where we'll all get together, and we're going to look and see if what we did in August made any difference, if it stopped it. If it didn't, then in September we would recommend a course of action. And again, we've had several options we've discussed. From one of the options for example, would have been to have the parties draw as an entire party. What happens currently, a person gets drawn out, and if they know the secret code word from some of the people that are willing to pay the money, then those people come and sign on with them for a price, which is basically selling or buying a duck blind. And so if they're required to put in as a party, that has a potential for eliminating some of these last minute deals, because if you put in as a party, you never know where you're going to get drawn. But that's just an example. We've got several other options we got on the table to consider as well, and we would consider that in September again. And if we felt like that our increased PR efforts and enforcement efforts didn't work, we would recommend a change to the commission. We would come to you in September and say we would like to recommend a change, and we need to have significant public input. We would have some public meetings and put out press releases seeking public input. So it would be the month the latter part of September and October would be that period when we'd be getting the public to weigh in, because I have a feeling it'd be pretty controversial. And in October, we would notify the commission what the results of our input, and if we still recommend changes. If we do recommend the changes, there would have to be a rulemaking hearing, which we would recommend would probably occur in November. And then in May, we would be able to set our regular hunting seasons on the management areas with the new blind drawing rules, which would take place, and they would be in effect in August of 2014. So that's the timetable we have and the options and the issues. So glad to take any questions.
Tim, what currently is the penalty if you do catch them red-handed trying to sell the blind?
I'd have to defer to one of our law enforcement folks. I'm not sure what the penalty is on that. Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Tim, would a computer draw make any difference in this, or would it occur just maybe in a different way?
Well, sir, the issue of a computer draw came up. I guess I feel kind of strange. I feel like the new guy, but I look around the room, and I've been at this podium probably as long as anybody now. A number of years back, we attempted to go with a computer draw, and the legislature stepped in and halted it after we'd spent quite a bit of money on programming, and it was pretty much universally opposed, not just by the legislature, later by the hunters as well. So it wasn't popular at that time. So I'm not sure that that sentiment's changed, but that would be one of the options we would present in October for input and for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate a little bit. Besides it being illegal, what's wrong with it?
Well, there are actually ways around it now. If
I know, but
the buying and selling is
Yeah.
illegal, a person can guide legally. They can simply say, well, you can't sign on, but I'll be here every day at shooting hour, and you pay me, and I can. That's a legal practice. So there's ways around it, I guess.
But I mean, basically the buying and selling of duck blinds, besides that it's against the law, but if it wasn't, what would be wrong with doing that? Who's injured and what's the problem?
I just think that's yes, sir.
Commissioner, generally what happens is when that occurs, in the calls that I get, persons who feel like that they don't have the means, don't have the financial means to compete in those draws, when blinds will go in from like a minimum of $10,000 up, they don't have the ability to compete for the best blinds. So if you can buy those best blinds and you're assured of that every year, it essentially becomes your blind. Whereas if everybody competes equally, then you take the luck of the draw, and as you get that opportunity, you pick the blind that you want to be in that year, as opposed to knowing you're going to be in it every year. And it just essentially comes back to a financial thing of those people who can afford it, can do it, and those that can't, don't. We'd like to level that playing field if we can.
But doesn't everybody have the same shot to draw that blind? And it's up to them whether they sell it or not?
Well, it is, but that's another part of the equation. What happens now that some people who, again, can afford that will pay the fees for people to enter the duck blind drawings so that they have the opportunity, if any one of those persons get drawn, then they know that that person's going to work with them to take over that blind.
And I would finish up by saying that this isn't something that our managers felt like was occurring everywhere. This is a few specific areas where we feel like it's pretty bad. There's some other places where that didn't feel like it was quite the same, same issues. So
We're not having that problem in East Tennessee.
the places I go, we don't have that problem either. So I think Middle Tennessee's in the same boat with you.
All right, moving on. I believe we have only one more issue in which we'd like to address the commission before we get into our proclamations and our season-setting recommendations. There was a request from the public for the agency to allow single-shot shotguns during the muzzleloader season. And this is something that was talked about quite a bit, not only at the main season setting, but in the regional discussions as well. And what we came out of that meeting, it was overwhelming. There wasn't a region or any of the divisions or any recommendation within the agency to support allowing single-shot shotguns during the muzzleloader season. I believe the primary reasons, what it boiled down to is just a number of really good reasons not to allow it. First and foremost, it was not highly recommended by the public. I believe we only had one individual that submitted the recommendation and provided a fantastic argument as to the ballistics of single-shot shotguns versus muzzleloaders. And we don't argue that point one bit. There's a number of things that we do have concern over. Obviously, a change like that, considering the satisfaction rate of the deer program, a change like that is somewhat of a major change. And so it has ripple effect that we believe may have unintended consequences that are not in our favor. A couple of the things, besides it not being asked for by a majority of the public, there is biological concern. I believe it was 2 years ago, Unit B recently allowed an antlerless, a doe, to be taken throughout the entire muzzleloader season. And so if a change like that does allow or permit more people to go afield, we may have to investigate some of the counties in Unit B whether or not they would have to change their regulations. So there is some biological concern. There's also some concern with the reload time. Obviously, a muzzleloader takes a lot longer to reload than a single-shot shotgun. And so it's the tradition of that muzzleloader season never was brought into the play, the ballistics of it. It was simply to allow that traditional type of muzzleloader weaponry for that particular season. So a lot of different reasons led us to believe that this would not be something that our agency would recommend. Let me look to see if I'm missing something here. That's it. I really don't have a really strong argument other than a lot of smaller reasons why we wouldn't want to consider this request. I will add that we have worked extremely hard over the last 5 or 6 years to simplify our regulations, and this would be something that would kind of go backwards to our simplification of our seasons, and so that was just another reason why none of the regions, nor did any of the divisions, whether or not it was wildlife or law enforcement, recommend this change to the muzzleloader season. Do you have any questions regarding that?
I just have a comment, is that, you know, when we look at our deer seasons, and as a commissioner, I think all of us up here are wanting to protect our resource. And if we start allowing another week or two with weapons that are even more efficient, then we're just going to have to condense the whole season for everybody that's involved. You know, the discussion I had with the man that was so well prepared is that, you know, that the ballistics are such that muzzle loaders are just as effective as a lot of the high-powered rifles and all. But there again, as you stated, it takes time to reload a muzzle loader versus, you know, a break-action rifle that you can just keep sticking bullets in. And so, you know, I think that, at least in my opinion, is that we've got to control how long we get to hunt. You know, we've got a very long rifle season, and this commission was part of it, but that's opportunity, and the opportunity we gave is because we didn't feel like it would hurt the resource. But if we keep doing things that are going to make us more effective, especially during a rut, then I think that then all of a sudden we're going to have less opportunity for the majority of the people. So I personally am in total agreement with what you say. At this time, can we have a pause for recording?